job, Victor.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of WizKidsForever. Welcome back to the channel. If you're checking us out on YouTube, be sure to comment, be sure to like, and be sure to subscribe. I'm on the road to 2,000 subscribers, but I can't do it without you guys' help and without you guys' support. So if you love this episode, be sure to spam them comments, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And without further ado, let's get into this episode. So to give you a timestamp as I do for all of my episodes, today is Thursday, June 27th, 2024. And this is the morning after the Washington Wizards went completely apeshit in the 2024 NBA draft. And we're here to give y'all a review. I don't expect this to be a long episode at all because the three players that the Washington... Oop, did I just bury the lead? Yes, the Washington Wizards did end up selecting three players yesterday, and all three players that were selected by the Washington Wizards, I actually mentioned in our last episode. Alexander Sarr was the number 2 pick, which was widely presumed going into the draft, but then the two other players, Bub Carrington and Kyshawn George, were also mentioned as, alternative options that I would like for the 26th pick. So if you haven't checked out that episode, go back and check that out. I'll touch on how I feel about each prospect, some of my pre-draft thoughts, and how I feel about them with the Wizards. But I also need to talk about the moves that the Washington Wizards made prior to the draft that set this path of chaos ablaze. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. So, as I mentioned, the Wizards selected Alexander Sarr as the number 2 pick. In my last episode that I recorded about 2.5 weeks ago, it was still a toss-up as to who was going to be the number 1 pick going to the Atlanta Hawks. When the lottery first happened, a lot of mock drafts were mocking Alex Sarr to the Hawks, but as we got towards my last episode, a lot of sports books were starting to change after Zachary Researcher's playoff run where he balled out. He absolutely balled out, and the Atlanta Hawks must have thought so because they ended up selecting Researcher and left us with who I think is the best prospect coming out of the 2024 NBA draft, and the prospect that I think fits our needs the most. As I mentioned last week, or in my last episode, we need a foundational big. We haven't had a foundational big so long, and we haven't had a young foundational big in God knows when. Who's the last foundational big? Do you want to give Brendan Haywood that title? He's probably the last one. JaVale McGee wasn't that guy. Andre Blatch wasn't that guy. Any big, and while I do love Nene, while I do love Marcin Gortat, they were brought in on the back half of their careers where, they contributed to a lot of winning teams, but they weren't necessarily going to come in and set your foundation. These were guys that were going to come in and integrate to whatever culture that you already had, and they did that. And, I love them for their services. But to finally have a young, promising big on the roster that has the potential to be a franchise-type building block, a foundational-type big, I am super excited. I haven't necessarily seen this in my 28 years of being a Washington Wizards fan. So just that point alone makes today feel like a new day. I woke up smiling today like, it's a beautiful morning. And I was wondering why. And then I thought back, we got Alex Sarr. In DC. We finally got a big man with some promise. And as I mentioned in my last episode, I touched on why I liked Alex Sarr a lot. But let me give you a brief synopsis of why I was such a huge fan of this pick. The biggest reason why I love Alex Sarr is his defensive versatility. This is a guy that has switchability galore. I'm not going to say that this is a guy, it's fat to say that this guy can guard all 5 positions. Because, no, I don't want Alex Sarr defending a perimeter player the entire game. But you know why? Because that affects what he can do at the rim. That affects what he can do at the rim as a rim protector. But he does have the capability of switching on to these perimeter players. If you guys look If you guys paid attention to the pre-draft, media scrums, and if you guys watch any type of film, you saw him clapping up Ron Highland when they played the G League at night. And that showed up on his film in the NBL as well. Now, I know a lot of the Australian guards aren't as fast and as quick as a lot of the NBA guards and things of that nature. But guess what? These are guys that still have a speed advantage. These are guys that still have a ball handling advantage over you. And that advantage didn't necessarily seem to come to his head a lot when, Alex Sarr was in ISO situations or switched onto a pick and roll with a perimeter player or a smaller player. He's absolutely, that's the one thing that he's going to come in day one and be able to contribute to your team. Is defensive versatility, defense, dynamic play on the defensive end, and somebody that brings the defensive gravity because he's not only going to be able to affect and challenge the rim, but he's going to be able to affect and challenge the mid-range area, the three-point area with his length and his ability to contest shots as well. While the offensive game is still very raw, there's a lot of promise there. This is a guy that you can see that he had a growth spurt. You can see that he had a growth spurt, and if you've been following him since his time at Overtime Elite, he's probably grown about 3 or 4 inches since then. And if you look at his film with Overtime Elite, he played a lot more of the wing than he did with Perth, and what I expect him to be doing with us, actually. A lot of reports were actually saying one of the reasons he didn't want to go to Atlanta is because he didn't see himself as a 5, let alone playing in that big man rotation with Onyeka Okongwu and Clint Capella. So if he does see himself as a power forward, this is an extremely long power forward at 7'1" with a 7'5" inch wingspan. But he will definitely need to improve on the shot. Because I've noticed like the trend where like we're pegging Jaren Jackson Jr. as really like a power forward because he struggled some at the 5 this year. And if we expect Alex Sarr to have that capability on the offensive end, he has to develop a shot as dynamic as a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr., who isn't not a lights out shooter by any means, but he has a respectable enough 3-point shot to keep to keep the defense honest. And while Sal doesn't have the jump shot to that level, especially at the 3-point line, he has the traits and he's shown flashes of being able to develop into that. He doesn't have the shot that Jaren Jackson has, but I think that his ball handling is better. Right now, stepping into the NBA, I think that his open floor ability is better. You've seen sometimes in Perth where he actually got the rebound and took the ball coast to coast, showing some of the wing flashes that he showed when he was playing in America with Overtime Elite. And this is a guy that has played with pros. He played with Perth in the NBL. He played with Real Madrid when he was damn near 15, 16. So this is a guy that is going to take the development serious. He knows how to take coaching in, and he knows how to attribute that coaching into a positive upward trajectory for his career. So these are all the reasons why I love Alex Sarr. If you go back and look at his Perth numbers, he did come off the bench at Perth where he was playing with a lot of grown men who aren't necessarily used to the NBL. Isn't the best league to suit Alexander Sarr's playing style. They got a lot of big brute, old ass grown men playing the big man position with beer bellies that are damn near immovable. Think about like Nikola Jokic brothers. Those are like the big men over there in Perth. And Alexander Sarr, a guy that is light in the ass. He has a 225-pound frame, but he can definitely stand to fill out that frame more. He would get bullied off the block a bit. And if you look, those 9 and 4 numbers don't really jump at you when you're reading off of a stat sheet, when you're reading the back of Alexander Sarr's basketball card. But if you transition those to the per 36 numbers, as if he was playing 36 minutes per game, those numbers pan out to be about 20 and 9. I can't complain with 20 and 9 from my second overall pick in what many have said was a weak draft. If we get that from Alexander Sarr, including about 3 blocks a game, in which he averaged 1.5 in the NBL in such limited minutes, so I would be a fool to think that he can't do it in the NBA once he gets a feel with the defensive IQ, once he gets the communication down, the spacing in the NBA down, and things of that nature. 20 and 9 with 3 blocks, sign me up. sign me up for the second overall pick in the 2024 week NBA draft. And these are all the reasons why I think that Alexander Sarr was the best prospect in this draft. To me, he has a build similar to Tyson Chandler, and I've always thought that it would have been intriguing to see what Tyson Chandler could be in this modern day NBA. I think that he's more laterally quick than Tyson Chandler, which allows him to defend the perimeter better. I'm not sure if he's as good of a rim protector as Tyson Chandler, but if you look at their measurables coming into the draft, they're damn near similar. Damn near the same weight, damn near the same height, damn near the same wingspan. And guess what? Alexander Sarr also jumps 38 inches. So he's a fucking freak prospect. He's a freak prospect, even though this draft didn't consider to have many, talented players at the top or many franchise-changing players. If this guy hits, which is a big if, this is the guy that's going to have the biggest swing for any franchise in the 2024 NBA draft. While I do want to see him crash the boards harder, as I mentioned earlier, he can stand to get stronger. But some of the pro comps that I have for Alexander Sarr is Jaren Jackson Jr. defensively, which I just mentioned, who was the 2023 Defensive Player of the Year, if I'm not mistaken. So if he does have that ability, he just has to reach his ceiling. And I think that he gives you a little bit of Evan Mobley vibes offensively. Evan Mobley is a hell of a defensive player as well, but he also has a little bit of he can get into his mid-range game. He also has a little bit of a handle better than the guys like Jaren Jackson and Tyson Chandler. So I think that, Alexander game is a fusion, baby, between like Jaren Jackson Jr. and Evan Mobley, which you can't complain with the number 2 pick in this so-called weak draft. All right, moving on to what would turn out to be our second pick of the night and our second lottery pick of the night with the 14th overall pick. But let me explain how we got here. A little before the draft, around 6 o'clock, we got a Woj bomb that the Wizards had actually traded forward Deni Avdija to the Portland Trail Blazers for the 14th pick in last night's draft, a 2030 first round pick, and 2 future second round picks. And that set Wizards Twitter ablaze. That set Wizards Twitter ablaze. Oh, well, Dawkins, Michael Winyard, they're just like Ernie, they're just like Tommy Shepard. Guys, relax. Take a chill pill. Because guess what? This is coming from a guy that loved Deni from day one with his clear limitations. I thought that he was a steal in that draft because if you guys can remember, before the 2020 NBA draft, most mocks had Deni going in the top 5. So for him to fall to us with the 9th pick, I love Deni from the jump because I liked what he showed in the pre-draft process before he became a Washington Wizard. And as I mentioned, there were clear limitations, and there still are clear limitations in this game. But he didn't necessarily play up to the cachet of the 9th overall pick in years 1 through 3. But guess what? He finally broke out this year. And I think that's the biggest reason why Wizards Twitter is in shambles, or was in shambles prior to the draft when they saw that we traded Deni, is because we're not used to drafting players and developing them here. So when we see somebody make the jumps that Deni did, make the strides that Deni did, we tend to hold on to that player. We tend to have a little DMV, red and blue tinted lenses and think that these players are better than what they are. And like I admit, Deni Avdija is a damn good player. I was a part of the Deni hive from day one. I think that the Deni Century was one of the hardest nicknames of all time. When he was over there locking people up in his second year. We should have kept that going for a longer time. I was a big fan of the Deni Century. And Deni is 23 on a cheap contract. But when we start to compete, I'm not sure if Deni Avdija fits that timeline. Because I don't know if you guys are delusional. I don't know if you guys just don't know. I don't know if you're just ignorant. This is going to be a long-ass rebuild, y'all. We're not going to be nice until at least 2026, 2027. And let me tell you why. Because the Knicks own our first-round pick if we don't get a top pick in the next 2 years. So we're about to bottom out. We're about to hope to capture the flag next year. And then guess what? We're going to have to bottom out the year after that. Just to make sure that we retain our picks. And then those transition into like 2 future seconds. So is Deni Avdija the guy that's going to fit this timeline? Yeah, at 23, when we finally compete, he's going to be about 26 or 27 and what is presumed to be the middle of his prime. And then he's going to be eligible for another contract at that point. And I'm sitting here and I'm going to ask you this question. While he did make a jump, everybody's talking about, that game against the New Orleans Pelicans when he absolutely balled out. My favorite moment from Deni was in his second year when he was going on that Defensive Player of the Year run in those first couple of 10 games, and he locked Giannis' ass up and threw that X in his face. That was my favorite Deni Avdija moment of all time. And I wish Deni well in Portland. But are you willing to pay Deni Avdija $250 million, $300 million when he is 27 to be the fourth or fifth best player on a prestige championship contender? That's not feasible if you want to compete, which we plan to do in 2026 and 2027. That's not feasible. And I don't know what the hell the Portland Trailblazers are doing, giving up 2 first-round picks for a marginal upgrade. That's going to make, marginal impact in the Western Conference. But guess what? Hey, I'll take it. We fleece the kids. We'll fleece the kids. So while I love Deni and I love Deni for, his services in DC, I was always a Deni over Rui guy because Deni always played hard. Even with his limitations, even with him not being able to dribble in his first couple of years, even with him not being able to shoot in his first couple of years, even with him thinking he was 6'2" in his first couple of years and throwing up bullshit at the rim. Deni always played hard. I always loved his defensive effort. And, yeah, I wish him well in Portland, but I'm not necessarily mad at this trade either because we brought in a guy with the 14th overall pick. He was a pseudo-local guy coming from Baltimore, Maryland, and St. Francis Academy, and I'm real familiar with his game coming out of, Baltimore, and that's Bub Carrington, combo guard, lead guard, whatever you want to call it, from the University of Pittsburgh. I think that he's going to be a lead guard with the Washington Wizards. And the reason that I say that is because Will Dawkins, Michael Winger, one thing that they hold close to their heart, one thing that they've held as, very important to them is positional size. And with Bud Carrington being 6'5" and having a 6'8" wingspan, he presents that positional size at the point guard position more so than the shooting guard position. Go ahead and check my last episode. You guys know I'm a Bub Carrington stan as well. That's why you're not going to really hear me say many bad things about this draft because they mentioned 3 of the players that I was very fond of in the pre-draft process. But if you didn't see that episode, my comp for Bub Carrington was like a 6'5" Lou Williams, who's a better passer and has more defensive potential. So he's a 6'5" Lou Williams with a 6'5" better passing Lou Williams with more defensive potential. And guess what? I know some of you guys are like, oh, Lou Williams came off the bench all his career. Guess what? He got about 6 men in a year. So to have that with the 14th pick in presumed to be weak draft is a steal. And guess what? Newsflash. In today's NBA and not 20 years ago when Lou Williams was drafted, there's a reason why Lou Williams had a late career resurgence because the NBA that we know and love today is more tailored to Lou Williams' style with the freedom of movement and things like that. For the combo guards that aren't necessarily the most athletic, that find ways to get it done and put the ball in the hoop, and that is Bub Carrington. Bub Carrington is the perfect lead guard for the 2024 modern NBA. Especially somebody that you're going to develop. No, I'm not coming in here and saying that he's going to have a rookie year like Tyreke Evans. Not by any means. But this is a guy that is a pure bucket getter. He has the best feel in the pick and roll game in the entire class, which you're going to see a lot more of in the NBA than he did in college. And this is a guy that he's going to blitz drop coverage. Oh, drop bigs are going to have nightmares in their sleep before they play the Washington Wizards with, Bub Carrington's devastating mid-range jumper. He has one of the best pull-up mid-range jimbos off of the dribble that I can remember scouting recently in the draft. He's going to kill drop coverage, which is famous in the NBA. And he's crafty. He's just going to find a way to put the ball in the hoop. And I see a lot of people just talking about his scoring, and I get it because he gives you pure bucket getter vibes. But did you know he was the only player in the entire country last year to average 13.5 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists last year? The only player in the entire country, freshman or not, to average 13.5, 5, and 4 last year. And when I got more into Bub's game, I was like, I don't want to be tripping. I don't want to be tripping. Please, I just saw some flashes of it yesterday when I was watching it. Is this Michael Wingers? Is Bub Michael Wingers Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? If Bub Michael Williams Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, let me know. Let me know. This is a guy, he's not at 6'5". He got the positional size that Shai has at the point guard position. He has the mid-range game that Shai has. He doesn't apply the same amount of rim pressure. The same amount of rim pressure. Excuse me, tongue twister there. The same amount of rim pressure that Shai does. That he has developed in his time as the lead ball handler in OKC. But Shai didn't necessarily have that when he was coming out of Kentucky. Trust me, I'm a Kentucky fan. I've been watching Shai SGA from day one. He didn't have that, driving ability when he was with the Clippers. He was more of a off-ball, do everything type guy. And he really carried his hat on defense. So we're naive to think that these guys can't develop, especially offensively. He can definitely stand to apply more rim pressure. That's why I copped him to Lou Will. He doesn't have the first step that Shai had, and he doesn't Lou Williams didn't necessarily have that explosive first step, but he found a way to get into the lane. He found a way to be crafty. And newsflash for you, while he was a 6 man, if Lou Williams was 6'5", he would have been somebody starting point guard for the majority of his year. Just to be real, just to be real. If he was 6'5" and could guard his man more consistently, he would have easily been somebody's lead guard for the majority of his year, which I think that Bub Carrington has the potential to do, which is why I love this pick. It might be my favorite pick of the draft when you think of value and things of that nature, because I think both of these guys in Bub Carrington and Alexander Sarr are going to be spending at least a decade here. These are foundational pieces. And lastly, we made a third pick. We stayed with our... matter of fact, no, we didn't. I'm jumping the gun just a little bit. We actually made a third pick in the first round. We actually moved up from the 26th pick that we had. We traded the 51st pick and the 26th pick to move up 2 spots with the New York Knicks to select wing Kyshawn George from Sweden and also the University of Miami. I also mentioned Kyshawn George in my last episode as well. So your boy Stunner had the crystal ball out when he was talking about these prospects. And the reason that I mentioned these guys is because these guys all fit the profile of what we've known Will Dawkins and Michael Winger alike. Long, athletic prospects. They don't mind if they got some international flavor. Actually, I think they might prefer that to this point. And these are guys that can impact, different facets of the game, not just one thing. As I mentioned, Bub, 13, 5, and 4. In his first collegiate game, he had a triple-double. Alexander Sarr has two-way potential, and Kyshawn George has two-way potential as well. 6'8" wing. I think he's more of a shooting guard from the University of Miami. He's not a super athlete, but he is a good shooter, shooting around 42% from 3 last year in his 1 year at the University of Miami. He was deadly in catch-and-shoot situations. And he's a decent ball handler. One of the reasons why he didn't go higher in the draft is because he's not overly athletic, as I mentioned, and I think that he can stand to be stronger. He's going to need some time in the NBA strength and conditioning program to get used to his body. But one thing that was mentioned in the draft when we selected him yesterday that I didn't notice is that this guy grew damn near a foot in 3 years. He grew from 5'8" to 6'8" in 3 years. I would be getting used to my body if that happened to me as well. I wouldn't feel the strongest if I just purchased some new limbs as well. So I kind of get that after hearing it. Hearing that he played point guard in Sweden made a lot of sense as well, because he has some ability as a connector. He has some ability as, a guy that can, not only initiate the pick and roll, but I think that this is a guy with his ability to be a cutter, with his positional size at the shooting guard position. He can run some, inverted pick and rolls. If Alexander Sarr is ever the prospect on the perimeter that some think that he can be, we might see some inverted pick and roll scenarios where Kyshawn George is actually setting the screen and being the roller in the short roll, being the connector of the play for the team. So I'm super excited for what we have done in the 2024 draft. My comp for Kyshawn George would be like if Cam Johnson and Kyle Anderson had a love child, a little fusion baby in between those, because I think that he brings some ball handling, some play initiation, some connectivity that Kyle Anderson brings, but he brings the shooting of a guy like Cam Johnson. If you guys looked at the playoffs, and if you guys can remember what Kyle Anderson did for the Minnesota Timberwolves in the playoffs, he damn near did everything well but shoot. That was the only reason that he wasn't playable in some of those series, because when he was on the floor, he impacted in so many other ways that, the coaching staff for the Minnesota Timberwolves didn't have any choice but to keep him on the floor. So if you paired that with Kyshawn George's shooting stroke and some of the percentages that he came out of college with, if we got a souped-up Kyle Anderson with the 24th pick and what was presumed to be, and I'm going to always remind you guys that, because going into yesterday, this was presumed to be a weak draft. But we knocked it out of the park, and it gives me a lot of confidence to see what these guys can do in a weak draft. It gives me more confidence to see what they can do in the 2025 and 2026 draft. So I'm super excited to get ready for the season. I'm ready to see what these summer league rosters are looking like. I don't think that Bilal's going to be on it, because it looks like he's going to be making his French national team. But on the round 2 of the NBA draft today, we don't have any more picks. Don't know if we'll actually sneak into the second round of this draft with the future seconds that we have in future drafts and things of that nature. But super excited to see how the draft plays out for the remainder of the weekend. And yeah, tap into the channel for more content, more updates, and everything that you come to this channel for. The most raw, uncut, and unfiltered analysis on the Washington Wizards. So with that being said, to close out this episode, if you're not following us on social media, be sure to follow us on X. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at WizKidsForever. If you're checking us out on audio-only platforms such as Spotify and such as Apple Podcasts, please be sure to leave a rating. Please be sure to leave a review. That's the only way that we're going to finesse these algorithms, so that when you're searching anything Washington Wizards, WizKidsForever is your number one content hub that pops up in that search bar. And that's it. I'll check in on you guys.